us is Dr. Frank Lawlis, a renowned psychologist and Supervisory Testing Director for American Mensa, who will tell us the signs of a genius child. Dr. Lawlis, thank you so much for being here today. What is a genius?
A genius is basically a journalistic term, which, and let me just read my favorite definition of a genius. It's an exceptional natural capacity of intellect manifested in a unique culture, creation, or scientific terms. So basically, we have a very small group of people that would be identified by using this definition. We're talking about, maybe 25 within the population of the United States. Very small group of people that we would classify under this definition as a genius.
Okay.
Now in Mensa, we don't test for geniuses. Basically, we test for intellectual capacity, which is more of a statistical term, and we identify these people with testing by having them reach higher levels than 2% of the population. So you can figure out that from a statistical point of view, that we're talking about a much larger group of people, maybe 50 or 60,000 people that could qualify for Mensa.
So I know that Mensa doesn't test until 10 years old, but say, how can you tell if a very young child might have abilities, or can you even test or have an inkling of a child very young with high intellectual ability?
The main one, the main ability that seems to be the most general is that of intellectual vocabulary. So they may be able to carry on conversations at a very high level. They may have the ability to understand abstractions at another level. Basically, they begin to act like an adult. Now, there's parts of this that are really fun to think about, because if you have a child that's smart, then you can begin to carry on more mature conversations. On the other hand, they don't act like kids. They act more like adults. So they may actually miss a lot of the the cutesy things that more average children often do.
Can you tell us how you can test into Mensa at a younger age?
There's several tests that we accept, like the Wechsler test, in which you would go to a private licensed psychologist and just have them test, and that sometimes goes down to around 2 years old. So there are other tests, but we don't. Mensa doesn't use those tests because we have to have a certain rigid structure for our testing, and kids just doesn't work for them. So it's easy enough, and I just got through recommending a child that was about 3 years old get into Mensa.
So what does that test look like then for someone that age?
Well, it's basically mostly has to do with finding the special skills that they're very good at. And in this case, and in most cases, it has to do with vocabulary and verbal abilities. So she could read at a very high level. She could use high levels of vocabulary and expressing herself. And she also found abstractions easy for her to understand that were common among words. So that would qualify her for Mensa membership.
What about things like musical genius and physical capabilities? How do you test for that as well, or how can you test a child for those?
Most of these what we call obstructions, or things that have to be customized around to get to an accurate estimate of their intelligence. So mostly we refer those people out to individual licensed psychologists.
What is the benefit? So if someone gets tested, can they fail a test at, say, age 10 and then go back a few years later and, pass it again? Or does that ever happen?
Well, absolutely, it happens a lot. What happens is that the brain starts developing very fast when you're born because it has to learn a lot of things, and then you get a tremendous growth. Now, let me just digress here a little bit. As your brain grows, it grows in different rates. So that it's kind of an uneven growth rate. So consequently, the most unstable part of your brain is in the beginning. So, so you may have a very good score, or you may have kind of an average score. But again, the brain develops until age 25, supposedly. And so the idea here is that as you grow, as your brain grows, it develops more and more capacity. It goes through changes. For example, in adolescence, it tends to prune itself and specialize. And so consequently, you get another boost along the way that basically gives you different kinds of opportunities to mature. And of course, I would also say sometimes your lifestyle issues will deflate some of these growth spurts. For example, if you get involved with drugs like marijuana or something like that, that freezes you, your intellectual capacity, sometimes permanently. So this can be not a happy occurrence. So I don't want to encourage anybody to do that by any means. But the idea here is that your brain will increase in capacity and wisdom in a natural kind of way.
I know a lot of high IQ children, have a stigma that maybe they're socially inept or have a weakness in other areas. Why is that?
The downside of having a high level of intelligence is sometimes you lose friends. Consequently, most of your people who have a lot of intellectual curiosity don't have very many friends because they don't have the same scope. I see a lot of kids that are kind of lost in their world, and they find other people. I want to talk about the social development and how important that is for a person with high IQ. You find that a lot of our Mensa friends, for example, actually formed the Mensa organization in order to gain some relationships that with people who they can understand each other. You'll find that children who have high intellectual capacities often get along better with adults than they will with their own age group because of the different abilities to understand each other. And for example, a lot of our Mensa friends have some difficulty in terms of understanding, or their friends understanding their jokes. So they often, the basic rule here is the more you deviate from the average, the more isolated you become. So some of the aspects of higher intellectual capacity sometimes has its cost.
So those are the main issues that they face is the friendships and the social area. Can they excel in a public school, or do they have to go to some kind of a special school?
Well, oftentimes that's a huge controversy, but mostly kids get very bored with the kind of intellectual capacity. I mean, the kind of intellectual challenges that they have in school. So what happens is that they often they get promoted to higher levels of achievement because of their interest and their excitement and their stimulation. But as I said earlier, they get further away from their own social group. So there's some real controversy in terms of how far away do you get away from your own social group of your own age.
So how do you solve that then? You just, through Mensa offers, what kinds of services does Mensa offer to kids then to help kind of build some of those social connections that they might not be getting at school?
Well, that's what Mensa does, is it gives you the opportunity to have social relationships with people who understand you, that have a certain humor that you have and a certain energy that you would get in terms of, for example, having similar hobbies or similar games that they like to play, and feel kind of the richness of having a good competitive partner. For example, it's not much fun if you play tennis with somebody that really can hit the ball. You don't get any better yourself, and you kind of get disinterested. So it's the same with intelligence. If you are playing a fun game like with chess and so forth, and somebody on the other side has that same kind of equal ability, then it's fun. I'm obviously big on Mensa, and I just want to say that you'll probably never meet a greater group of people with tremendous personality than you will in Mensa, because they're so caring for each other. It's a real brotherhood or sisterhood or community that really helps the development of a child with high IQ.
Appreciate you coming on and sharing all your wealth of knowledge and tips. So.
Well, you're more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. If you know someone who'd be a great fit for the show, come on over to ingeniousbaby.com and share your tips and story ideas. You are your baby's first and best teacher.